what's up guys? My name is Dylan Johnson from Soccer Mag. Since there are no fixtures this weekend because of the international break, the MoneyMan and Ollie are taking a breather to focus on the World Cup. So I'm just going to be doing a quick review of the weekend's fixtures, just going through, who played well, which are the good performers, and then maybe at the end, just go through some of the news that's going on in the Premier League. I'm not going to do a huge in-depth analysis for most of the games. I'm just going to focus on the big ones, so the top six. But I'll quickly just go through all the scores. So this was quite a high-scoring weekend. I think there were 41 goals over the 10 games, which kind of is the exact opposite of what we were predicting last week. I think I predicted about 5-2-1s, but I think the average score was like 2-2 or 3-2 or something like that. So it was a very high-scoring weekend, but I guess that's classic Premier League. The ones that you think aren't going to be very high-scoring tend to be pretty big ones. So let's get into it. The first game was I'm not going to spend too much time on it. It was Luton versus West Ham. I think, the score of that wasn't very unsurprising. West Ham won 2-1. I think, Luton got their first goal of the season, but I think we all, that result was pretty unsurprising. Next, we have another exciting one, Sheffield versus Everton. Both of these teams not doing really great at the moment. I think it's Everton's first points and their first goals of the season. I thought they weren't going to score any goals, but, that's just how it is. There isn't much to say about this one. I think Everton were bailed out by Jordan Pickford at the end. But other than that, if you're an Everton fan, this is going to be a long season for you guys. I feel sorry for you. Next game is Man City versus Fulham. In my opinion, Fulham were good in the first half. I think Man City, they didn't really create an insane amount of chances. Fulham were threatening. They responded really well to going 1-0 down, scoring straight away. And then I think, the controversial Ake goal at the end of the first half in extra time, I think that was kind of a game changer. I think, Fulham kind of lost their heads. Second half, City just, they do what City do. Haaland came to play and he scored another hat-trick. I think he's on 6 goals for the season now. So, Fulham, they tailed off second half, but first half I would say is promising from Fulham. I think they've played well against Arsenal. I wouldn't, Man City at home, it's always going to be a tough game for the smaller teams. Next, we have probably, in my opinion, the biggest upset of the weekend. This was Chelsea versus Nottingham Forest. Forest, I think, they seem to be a problem for the big teams this season. I think they narrowly lost to Arsenal, narrowly lost to Man United, and now they've beaten Chelsea. And I think, Chelsea, watching Chelsea play that game, they're a bit of a puzzling team at the moment. I think they're not necessarily playing badly. I think they're actually pretty close to, winning games. But it's strange that I think their goal burden is too focused on Nicholas Jackson and Raheem Sterling at the moment. I think if they don't score, they're in serious trouble. I think right now, I wouldn't say it's an experiment because Poch is being pretty consistent with it, but playing Ben Chilwell up the left wing, I can kind of understand what he's trying to do because Ben Chilwell's his great delivery. He is a great attacking threat. He's always been one of Chelsea's, best attacking players. But at the end of the day, he is a fullback. He is a wing back at the very best. He isn't going to, help Jackson and Sterling up front the same way a natural winger would. And I think that, I'm not saying they should drop Chilwell. I think Chilwell's very important for the way they play. But I believe that maybe, I know Mudrik's been on and off, but maybe it's time to give him minutes. Give the wingers that you've bought, Madueke, Mudrik, give these guys minutes in their natural position instead of trying to force a wing back, to play as a winger. I think Malo Gusto looks pretty good in Reece James' absence. I don't think he's looked bad. I think he wants to get involved. He looks quick. He looks like he's got a good football brain. And I don't know. Caicedo's had a really rough start to his Chelsea career. His first game against West Ham, he was not good at all. And I think it's harsh to blame him for the Forest goal, but he did lose the ball in midfield. So some would say that it was his fault. But Chelsea at the moment, I think people are writing them off. I think they're not too far away, but something needs to change. Forest, though, they're looking like a good team. They're looking like they're going to be tough to beat. I would say Forest, Bournemouth, Brentford, West Ham, and Palace. Those 5 teams at the moment are very they're going to be the ones. Those are going to be the teams that they go to Anfield or they go to Old Trafford or they go to the Emirates and they cause the big teams problems because they're looking very difficult to beat. They're looking very comfortable in the way they want to play. They're comfortable without the ball, but they're taking their chances. Historically these low teams have 3 or 4 chances and they don't take them. But right now, all of them are taking their chances. I think they've all, the fact that Forest scored 2 against United, that wouldn't have really happened. Hasn't really happened in the past. Moving on to the next game. This is another interesting game. I think Burnley versus Spurs. Firstly, Lyle Foster scored for a 2nd game in a row, so happy for him. Hopefully he can try get as close to double figures as possible. I think both of his goals have been very good finishes, so I think he can definitely achieve that. And I think similar to the Fulham City game, in the first half, Burnley were in the game 100%. They went 1-0 ahead. Spurs were creating chances, but they weren't dominant. They weren't controlling the game. Burnley were always, a threat when they had the ball. And then second half, like City Fulham, it was just Maddison, Manor Solomon, Son, these guys started actually playing. And I think those 3, even with Kulusevski, they are developing a great relationship with each other. I think, some of the runs that Solomon makes, some of the passes that Maddison makes. The exciting thing about James Maddison is that he is always looking to impact the game. Whenever he gets the ball, he's looking up. He wants to make a pass. He wants to, shoot at goal. And if I'm honest, it's almost as if we don't even notice Harry Kane is gone. They're actually, if you compare it to last season, they're almost playing better. And I think you can put that down to, the new manager, Ange Postecoglou. I think it's probably refreshing as a Spurs fan to have a manager that isn't doing the club a favour by being there. I think, Antonio Conte, Jose Mourinho, I think more Conte than Mourinho, but it was like they were extremely successful managers going to a team that hadn't won in a while, and they were doing the club a favour by being there. And I think that mentality was so toxic. It was rotting the squad. They weren't playing well. As soon as something didn't go their way, the manager dropped his head. It was never his fault. It was always the players. And I think, Postecoglou is the complete opposite. He has taken this job as it's like, as the, as the honour it is to coach a top Premier League team. He's come from Celtic. He's humble and he's trying to play exciting football and he's patient. But, he's not in the spotlight whatsoever. I don't think he's making it about him at all. And I think that's very refreshing. And I think Spurs are going to be a very difficult team to beat this season. I think they're going to score goals. And I don't know if they'll end top 4 this season, but I think, if they stick on the trajectory, they could be a very solid, back to where they were in the top 4. Next, a bit of like a smaller game, Brentford versus Bournemouth. This was 2-2. I think, like I was saying earlier when I mentioned Brentford and Bournemouth, both these teams, they're not going to win every week, but they will have a go every week. And Bournemouth are looking, I've said it before, Bournemouth are looking like a completely different team. They're not just the newly promoted team anymore. They actually look like they've got structure, they're solid, they're wanting to affect games, they're wanting to win games, they're wanting to score goals. And, the fact that they went to Brentford and they were 2-1 up until I think in the 93rd or 94th minute, Mbeumo equalised. Bournemouth are sending a message this season, and I don't think they're going to be relegated whatsoever. I think they're going to be, I'm not saying they're going to be like 8th or 9th, but I think they should be safe. Now another of the bigger games, Brighton versus Newcastle. This was a big surprise for me. I did not see Brighton, I didn't see this game being so one-sided. I honestly thought it would be a draw because I can see both teams, they're wanting to play attacking football. They're both pretty solid defensively, and Brighton just completely recovered from their shock loss to West Ham last week, 3-0 up against Newcastle, who had the best defence in the league last season, is really impressive. Evan Ferguson, I think it was not his first start of the season, but the first time this season that he's actually had, an opportunity to lead the line. And he looks to be like the next Brighton's next big thing, I've been seeing comparisons of him to, young Harry Kane, young Wayne Rooney, and I think it's too early to say something like that, but his second goal in particular, to run 15, 20 meters and then take a shot so confidently from so far out, you know, you can't train something like that. That's just natural confidence. He's a natural finisher. And the fact that he's only 19 years old, he's still a teenager, I think he's got a bright future ahead of him. I think the big teams are already getting the checkbooks out because they're probably going to want to buy him soon. And speaking about Newcastle, I think Newcastle are in serious trouble now. Obviously, they've played probably three of the hard, like, if you look at the 4 games they've played this season, Aston Villa, City away, Liverpool at home, Brighton away. If you were to ask any fan, going into the season, what would you say are the 10 most difficult games? All 4 of those games are probably around in that area. City away is probably the hardest game to play, So I will give them credit in that they've probably got their most difficult games out of the way. But the fact now that they are 7 points off 4th place already, I think they're 14th or 15th. And looking at their Champions League group, I think to have Dortmund, AC Milan and PSG in your group, they are going to have a tough couple months ahead of them, and Eddie Howe has to dig deep. He has to get these guys, back on track. Because if they draw another game or lose another game, a game that they're expected to win, we've seen this before where a promising young team can easily fall off the rails and, they could end up finishing 8th or 9th. I don't think that they necessarily will. I think Eddie Howe's a great manager and I think he will be able to get stuff back on track. But, they're on a very thin line right now. The next game, Crystal Palace versus Wolves. So I've been pretty consistent and I don't think Wolves are that great this season. I think they're worse than they were last season. But they are starting to score more goals now, which is positive. I wasn't expecting them to score a lot of goals this season, but they're starting to pick it up a bit. I think Palace, like I mentioned earlier, they are a great team this season. I think their attacking threat, which you wouldn't really, put with a Crystal Palace team managed by Roy Hodgson, but, Eduard played so well. His link-up play with Eze, and then when he came on, I think Mateta got 2 assists. They actually play really exciting, attacking, positive football, and they are going to score lots of goals this season. I think they were 3-1 up, and Wolves scored their second in the extra time as well, so it was pretty comfortable. But I think they're a team to watch this season. They don't necessarily, I'm not saying they're going to push for Europe, but I think they'll be at least an exciting. They're on par with Brentford, where they're not going to necessarily be top half, but they are an exciting team to watch. Next, Liverpool versus Aston Villa. So, for me as a Liverpool fan, this game was very I thought that the performance was better than the result. I think that I was expecting Liverpool to score goals, but I was also expecting them to concede. And, I thought against Aston Villa, their defence, especially, I was very, sceptical of Joe Gomez and Joel Matip. I think over the past year, they've been off form completely. But particularly Joe Gomez, I thought that he had one of the best games he's ever played for Liverpool. He was so mature. I think he made one mistake the whole game, and that was when he slipped. He slipped on the halfway and he lost the ball, but he recovered back to stop the attack. So I think he made over 100 passes. We were worried we were missing Van Dijk, but he basically, he fulfilled that Van Dijk role perfectly. If he can stay fit, if he can stay in this form, I don't think Liverpool need to worry too much about their defensive depth. I think, he can cover right back. Even when he swapped to right back when Trent went off injured, he was perfect. Then in Liverpool's attack, I think, Trent had probably one of his best passing games I've seen. He was stepped up as captain, didn't feel pressure at all, and he was spraying passes all across the pitch. I think there was one, he had one pass to Salah, which was the assist before the assist, and then he had one pass to, I think it was Luis Diaz, where it was perfect, low-driven, perfectly between the defenders, and you just look at something like that and you're like, how can someone do that? You can't understand how someone can pull off something like that. Dominic Szoboszlai had his best game for Liverpool. I thought his goal was, people are saying Gerrard-esque, but it really was. His finish, with his weak foot outside the box. Then, I think what was also interesting about that game is the way Klopp set up. I was not, when I saw Curtis Jones, McAllister and Szoboszlai as the midfield 3, I was worried. I was thinking, Ollie Watkins, Moussa Diaby, if Leon Bailey comes on, these are quick, threatening players, and that isn't, the most defensively sound midfield that you could have seen. But it was basically defend with the ball. Like, you defend by having possession. And Curtis Jones, McAllister, Sobslai, they recycled the ball perfectly. They protected the ball, they recycled the ball. And honestly, looking at that, it's looking at it, it's like Liverpool's best form of defence now isn't going to be with Endo as a holding midfielder or getting numbers back. It's going to be holding the ball and protecting it so that other teams can't actually attack you. And Aston Villa, as threatening as they've been, like I've mentioned, Ollie Watkins, Moussa Diaby, they barely had any chances the whole game. I thought Liverpool kept them out really well. I think they struggled. They struggled to gain any. They couldn't play out from the back. Liverpool's press was really good. So overall, as a Liverpool fan, very happy with that performance. I'd say also Darwin Núñez got his first start. And even though he didn't score, I thought that he actually played really well. I think it was, he is the kind of player where even if he doesn't score, he impacts the whole defense. He is so quick and his runs in behind. He's so erratic. He's so chaotic that defenders can't switch off. He puts so much pressure on the back line that he creates so much space. He creates so many chances for himself. I think he played really well. I would like to see him start again when we next play. Then, last game of the weekend, probably the biggest game of the weekend, Arsenal versus Man United. So, I think this game, obviously Arsenal won comfortably from the scoreline. But I think, Man United were a couple millimeters away from that Garnacho goal from having the perfect away performance. They let Arsenal have the ball. They let Arsenal dominate possession, but I wouldn't say Arsenal threatened United too much. I think Wan-Bissaka kept out Martinelli really well. I think Diogo Dalot kept Saka out really well. I think their threat on the counter-attack, Marcus Rashford, that's, Arsenal at times, even though they had a lot of the ball, they looked worried. They looked like they were focused on Rashford. They were like, okay, we can't get too carried away because this guy is here in the top left. He wants to get in behind. And that's how he scored the first goal. So, I think also I feel bad for United fans because if you had told them that in the transfer window that they were playing against Arsenal with Johnny Evans and Harry Maguire as their centre-backs, they would probably cry. That must be really difficult to take, especially now Martinez went off injured. But honestly, I wouldn't be too negative about United's performance. I think they actually played pretty well. Arsenal, obviously, they got the win, but I wouldn't say it was, they weren't comfortable winners. I think Declan Rice did really well to get that finish, and then the Jesus third goal was kind of, United going all out for it. That's pretty much all I can say about that. Okay, guys, well, I'm going to end it on that. So, thank you for watching, and I'll check you guys after the international break.